Hey friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be reviewing OPI's big Zodiac energy collection. As you probably know, I am a big fan of astrology. I have a whole astrology and Zodiac series on my channel where I pick a bunch of shades from my collection for each sign. So naturally, whenever we get an astrology or Zodiac based collection, I do get very excited for it. But whenever we get it from a mainstream brand, I get a little bit nervous because usually they're not as creative as indie brands. So sometimes they might just be a little bit basic. But yeah, I will be sharing a lot of my thoughts throughout the video because I just can't help myself. But I'll share more of it at the end after some comparisons. For now, let's just get into the swatches. Of course, we're going in order, so that means we're starting with Kiss My Aries, and this is described as a fiery red shimmer. So I wasn't really surprised that we got a red for Aries, but I guess I was surprised more so by the formula of this one. Don't get me wrong, I do love the formula. As you can see, it is very full coverage on the first coat. I think if you have shorter nails with very minimal free edge, you could get away with one coat. I ended up doing two for my swatch, and I think it looks great, but I don't know, this just doesn't really give me Aries energy. I feel like this feels like a holiday red, so I like it, but maybe not for Aries. So you'll have to let me know if you're an Aries how you feel about this color. Next we have Taurus-t Me, and this one is a mint green shimmer with some specks of gold and even blue in there, but they're really hard to capture. It's definitely a predominantly green shade. So as you can see, this one is a super sheer formula where it basically looks like it could be a topper on the first coat because it is just so sheer, but there still is a lot of shimmer particles in there and it's pretty even coverage as well. But I'm going to be showing this built up on its own in 3 coats so you can see that mint color really built up to what it looks like in the bottle. So kind of like the last shade, I do like this color, but I'm still not totally sold on it being a very Taurus shade. I mean, Taurus is an earth sign and green is an earthy color. And I do appreciate that this is a very pretty and sparkly green because we know that Tauruses love luxurious, sparkly things. So I kind of get it, but I'm just not fully sold. And going back to the formula, this one still is sheer on 3 coats, so I'll probably layer this over a milky pink next time. The next shade we have is Gemini and I, and this is described as a soft white shimmer. So I wouldn't really agree with the description because it's more of an off-white instead of a soft white. Like this leans very champagne, like there's almost a blush pinky peach tone to it, but I guess because of the shimmer being very white or silvery, it just gives it a whitish pearly look. So that being said, this shade really surprised me for Gemini because if I was a Gemini, I would think this shade is just so boring for me. Like Geminis are just so complex and there's a lot going on to them, and I guess more than anything it's just the white color that I'm so surprised by because Geminis are just colorful personalities, so I was expecting something colorful, but the polish isn't too bad. It builds up nicely. Next we have Cancer-tainly Shine, and this is a holographic silver nail polish. So this is actually a super fine holographic fleck in a clear base. So over a bare nail, you can see there's still a bunch of nail shining through. So you kind of can wear this as a topper, I think. It just would be a very dense kind of topper depending on the look that you're going for. So of course, I'm going to be building this up in 3 coats, and you likely can get fuller coverage if you just sponged this on. But I just didn't do that for the video, so I'm just showing you how it looks painted on. So I didn't love how it looked in 2 coats just because it's like nearly full coverage, but there were just a few awkward bald spots here and there that I think are just so noticeable to me. Maybe I'm just super picky, but personally, I think this would look best in one coat as a dense topper or in 3 coats when it's built up to be fully opaque. So yeah, there's not much else to say about this one. It's like your standard silver holographic nail polish. I think it's super pretty, sparkly, love it, but maybe it's just like a little more out there for what I normally would think of for Cancers, because I would go for something a little bit more subdued, but maybe that's just me. Speaking of being out there, the next one we have is the Leo-nly One, and this one is a bold gold pearl. So I know that Leos are gonna get golds, and I'm okay with that, but this shade was questionable for me. I just don't really find it super flattering. I guess to be fair, I know a lot of people don't find pearl finishes to be super flattering, but this one in particular for Leos, I feel like is just not good enough for them. And I am so sorry on your behalf if you are a Leo and you're just like, what is this shade? But if you do happen to like it, then great. I'm very happy for you. But I just need to know, like, how many Leos actually like this. It's just not giving what I want it to give. Obviously, I would prefer a different finish, but even the color I feel like is just not quite right. Maybe it's just not flattering on me, but I swear, even though this is a bright yellow gold, I think there's just a hint of green in there, like in the shimmer. So it just makes it not that appealing to me. I'm so sorry. So moving on, we have hashtag Virgoals, and this one is described as a bronze pearl, except I wouldn't call it a pearl. I would call this more of a shimmer, kind of like the Taurus shade, because this does not give me pearl vibes like the Leo shade did. So this one is very sheer on the first coat, but you can still see that slight bronze tint of color to the base, and there's this really interesting gold greenish shimmer in there that honestly I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Like when I first saw the shade in the bottle, I was like, okay, this is interesting, and I was kind of expecting to hate it, but I ended up sort of liking the shade. Now, I don't know if it's because I am a Virgo rising and so I'm just trying to love the shade and be proud of it, but honestly, I feel like it does give me harvest goddess vibes. So I don't know, there's something about this that works for me, and I just can't explain it, but I imagine not many people are gonna like this shade, probably because of the formula too. As you can see on 3 coats, it is still very sheer, but that's kind of expected for shimmery shades. Next, we have Feelin Libra-ted, and this one is described as a shimmery violet, but there's also these like blue and magenta micro flakes in there. So I am not gonna lie, I was so disappointed when I saw that this was the bottle for Libra, because I just didn't think this was a pretty shade. Thankfully, I do think it applies and looks better on the nail than it does in the bottle, but I still struggled a lot with the formula on this one. It was a little bit more on the jelly side, so on the first coat it ended up being pretty streaky and uneven, and here you can see me really struggling with the second coat and just kind of applying more polish towards the tips because it just wasn't applying evenly for me. So I did end up having to do a thicker third coat just to even everything out, and I do think it looks fine as a finished product, and I guess the color is starting to grow on me a bit more. As you probably know, I am a certified pink lover, so I was just expecting the Libra shade to be like a really glitzy, girly, sparkly pink, and this just was very different than what I was expecting, but it's still a fun shade overall. I think I'm just, you know, being a little harsh on it because I was expecting pink. Up next we have Scorpio Seduction, and this is a vivid cobalt blue shimmer. So I was also kind of surprised by this one because normally when I think of Scorpios, I would think of like a deep red, maybe a purple, but I never would think of blue. But I think it's so interesting because Scorpio is a water sign, so this polish actually kind of fits for them. Obviously, it doesn't look great on the first coat because it's super sheer and streaky and just, yeah, not pretty at all. But once we layer on a second coat and get it fully opaque, you really see just how deep and alluring this shade is, and I love it. It is just so beautiful. Again, maybe not typical Scorpio energy, but I can kind of see it. This one also has a gorgeous purple shift that I just couldn't capture on my nails. It was just a lot easier to tell in the bottle. The next shade we have is Big Sagittarius Energy, and this one is a burgundy pearl. So even though this one had a really flawless formula, it was like almost fully opaque on the first coat, I just ended up having a weird bald spot near the middle of the tip of my nail. But aside from that, I just don't know how I feel about this pearl finish. I mean, I love the color because Sagittarius is a fire sign and they're in the beginning of December, and this shade just gives me holiday vibes, like especially or more specifically the colors of like ribbons that you wrap your presents with. So I love that, but it's just like the pearl finish that it just isn't doing it for me. Next we have Feelin Capricorn-y, and this is described as a sage green shimmer. So I would call it a bit darker than a sage green. This is a little bit more like a jade to me personally. And the shimmer is actually kind of like a predominantly pink shade, but in extreme angles it shifts to gold, which I really like, and I can't wait to show you that in a minute. But yeah, this one had a very similar formula to Virgoals or Taurus-t Me. It's very sheer on the first coat and just not really flattering in my opinion. So I do think this shade would look best in 3 coats. On 2 coats, as you see here, it does have pretty even coverage. I just don't love the look of it personally. I'm not really sure if it's the color of this specifically or just the coverage, because I think OPI shimmers are just more on the sheer side compared to other shimmers from other brands that I love. So maybe that's what it is. But yeah, on 3 coats, it's still a bit sheer. You can see some nail line for sure, but it just deepens the color and makes it a little bit more rich, which is a perfect word for Capricorns. So while I'm still not sold on the color, I do appreciate the more fun finish attached to this, because I think Capricorns usually get the bad rep of being boring or predictable or something. So anyway, here it is with the adjusted lighting, so you can see that gold shimmer. Honestly, I think I would like the color a lot more if you saw the gold head on. Next we have Aquarius Renegade, and this is a navy blue pearl. So I'm not quite sure what it is about these pearl finishes. I just wouldn't have thought of including them, at least not for the specific signs like Aquarius and Sagittarius. They just don't give me pearl vibes, but I do like the color. At least I think it's such a gorgeous shade of blue. It's just so bright, and the formula on this one was definitely really nice too. As you saw, it was nearly full coverage on the first coat and very creamy and opaque on the second. But yeah, it just kind of left, you know, some brush strokes that you normally see with pearls. So I might try sponging this on next time just to diffuse those brush strokes, but yeah, this just feels a little boring to me. And rounding out the collection and the Zodiac, we have Pisces The Future, and this is a light blue pearl that has an aqua and even a very faint pink color shifting shimmer. It's just pretty hard to pick up. It's very faint. But yeah, even though I was just saying why do we have the pearls in this collection? I do think the pearl finish can work for Pisces. It's still maybe not my first choice of finish for the sign, but it works because Pisces are the fish of the zodiac, so pearls just give me fish scale vibes or mermaid scales, whatever you prefer. And I just love the color so much. It just immediately reminds me of aquamarine, which is the March birthstone. And I am a fan. I love aquamarine. I think it's just so pretty. So I'm not sure if that was intentional with the color or if they were just going for that kind of mystical mermaid fishy vibe, but either way they kind of nailed it with this one. So here is the collection lineup, and obviously I'm not going to be expecting a Zodiac collection to be super cohesive, so I am kind of a fan of how eclectic looking this is with all the different colors and finishes, but on a closer look, we can see some similarities among the colors and finishes, so I'm not sure if I'm a fan. Now getting into comparisons, we're starting with Kiss My Aries, and I wanted to show this next to Mooncat's Whiskey Sunrise, which was their most recent red, but as you can see next to Kiss My Aries, this looks very brown. So a closer red that Mooncat has is actually Pandemonium from the recent collection before the one that just launched. This one is more of a true cherry red kind of shimmer, but it ends up being a lot brighter on the nail with a slight orange kind of undertone to it, and the shimmer is a little bit different as well than Kiss My Aries, so these aren't as close as I thought they were going to be. And I also wanted to see this next to OPI's I'm Not Really a Waitress, which is another classy red shimmer. And honestly, I was gonna save this one for later to compare it next to Big Sagittarius Energy because I thought it was gonna be closer to that deeper kind of red, but it ends up looking a lot lighter and more similar to Kiss My Aries, at least in the bottle, because on the nail, these still are not dupes. I'm Not Really a Waitress is just a little bit deeper with a slightly more pearl finish. Next for Gemini and I, the closest shade that I had was Butter London's Champagne Princess, which I think came out in last year's winter trio. And this one is a champagne pearl kind of polish. I thought they were the closest, at least again, that I have in my collection, but Butter London's is more of a true pearl finish with a slightly more yellow tone to it, and Gemini and I is more of a shimmer. Next for Cancer-tainly Shine, I wanted to see this next to Holo Taco's Flakie Holo Taco, which is the closest that I had to a micro flake silver holographic polish. Holo Taco's is obviously a lot more sparse because it's meant to be a true topper, whereas Cancer-tainly Shine is a lot more dense and can be built up to be full coverage. I'm sure if you sponged on Holo Taco's, you can get it full coverage. It just would take a lot more coats. Then for the Leo-nly One, I of course had to see this next to Morgan Taylor's Golden Hour Glow, which just launched, and it's another golden pearl finish. So kind of funny to have two of these in the same season because it's such a unique shade, but they are slightly different. I would say that Morgan Taylor's is a little bit more amber leaning, so you can see how the Leo-nly One leans a little bit green, and Morgan Taylor's is more of a true pearl. Then for #Virgoals, the closest that I had was Zoya's Esme, which is this really pretty bronzy peach kind of shimmer polish with a gold sheen to it. So they kind of look similar in the bottles, but on the nails you can definitely tell them apart where they're not dupes, but still kind of similar vibes. Virgoals is just a little bit darker with a more bronzy kind of color to it, and it also has a slightly greenish shimmer. Next for Feelin Libra-ted, the closest purple that I had to this was Olive Ave's Nebula, which looks really similar in the bottle as far as that kind of purple metallic looking hue, but because it is a metallic, it ends up looking a lot darker on the nail because again, the OPI is just more of a jelly kind of finish. So it does have a slight berry pink sort of hue to it, but it also has those blue and pink flakies. So I thought of adding Holo Taco those Aurora unicorn skin on top of Nebula to try and recreate the vibe of that polish, but it was kind of a fail in my opinion. It just looks like a lot more purple and almost like what I would expect Feelin Libra-ted to look because of the bottle, if that makes sense, but because it's a jelly, it just looks a little lighter. Then for Scorpio Seduction, the first shade that I immediately thought of was OPI's Abstract After Dark, which I feel like came out in the last couple of years, and it kind of has a similar blue to purple shift, but in a much darker base. So a more similar color is actually Mooncat's Morgue, which is this navy blue polish with a really strong blue shimmer that even shifts to purple in the corners, which I think you can see in the corners of the bottle. But I think on the nail they do look a little bit different, but honestly they are so close that I think I would pass these off as dupes. Like, I think I can see a slight color difference in the bases, but other than that, they are pretty much the same. The main difference is Mooncat dries down matte. Moving on to Big Sagittarius Energy, this one immediately reminded me of Cirque's Sashay from last year's holiday collection. It's just one of those soft metallic looking ribbon shades in my opinion, but they end up looking a little bit different color wise, where Big Sagittarius Energy is just more berry and slightly deeper with a more true pearl finish. And the last comparison that I have is for Pisces The Future, and I'm actually going to be comparing it next to OPI's Surf Naked, which came out in the Summer Make the Rules collection. This was like another sky blue pearl kind of shade, but I would say that one is more of a true sky blue, while Pisces The Future is a little bit more teal and aqua leaning, and also a bit more sheer too. This is 2 coats of each. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for OPI's Big Zodiac Energy collection. So as always, I would love to know what your thoughts are on this release, and more specifically about your sign or signs, because I don't know if I mentioned it, I probably have mentioned it in my other videos, but as you probably know, I am a Libra sun, but I'm also a Cancer moon and a Virgo rising. And overall, I guess I would say I'm the happiest with the Cancer shade because it's just a silver hollow glitter and you can't really go wrong with those. And I do really like the Virgo shade, but the Libra one, not gonna lie, was really disappointing for me. I mean, I did try like wearing it again and it's kind of growing on me, but I can't tell if it's just me trying to be nice and be like, you know, it's not that bad. But it's just not as nice as I was expecting, which is kind of the overall feeling towards the other shades in this collection, and just I guess the collection as a whole, where it sort of fell a little flat for me, and I just am a little disappointed by that because, as I already said, I'm a big fan of astrology and I love seeing brands lean into that, even though I know it is kind of like cash grabby, like they don't actually care about astrology and all of that. It's still a fun and creative thing to do, and these just didn't really do it for me. So I feel a little disappointed. I mean, as far as the polishes go, they're not bad products themselves. Like, I didn't really have issues with them and they weren't like, you know, bad in any other kind of sense, but I just didn't feel like they fit their signs that well. So I'm curious to know what you think, and if you think they did a great job with these or if you hate them. Let me know any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.